You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is August 27th, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, it's an early morning on a Tuesday, and how are you feeling today?
Oh, Spencer, good morning to you. Yes, this is a very early record for us. It was sort of a necessity. This is our first show ever after actually having played The War Within live, so that's awesome. We kind of shifted from the Monday thing because the last time we recorded, we were a couple days out from early access, and then it was like, well, last night was global launch. It was kind of early evening here.
Yep.
And it was like, well, let's wait and see how the launch goes. Let's see if we can get some heroic dungeons under our belts to just be able to have some stuff to talk about. And so, we figured pushing a little bit past that launch window was kind of the best way to go. Now, unfortunately, various scheduling concerns prevent us from having played post reset. So there is some stuff that's going to be out there this week that we haven't played yet and can't really personally speak to. But Luckily, we did get some blue text, which will help guide the way for this week's priorities and festivities and such. But man, it feels so good to be out the other side, right? Like, I love Dragonflight. It was really one of my top 3 favorite expansions, I think, ever, behind Legion and Wrath. But I was so ready to get out of it. There was just nothing left for me there. I loved it to the point where I sort of strangled it to death, right? Because it was just like, it got to the point where at the end of last week, like Wednesday, I was doing Winterpelt Furbolg rep and language learning, and I was finishing up, Cobalt assembly rep because I had like the last little chunk of that to knock out. And like, that is just like deep time waster kind of stuff, right? Like, there's no impact on your character. Like, it's cool to have the language learned and everything, but it was just like, I want to do this stuff because I want to have it done on the account. I want to look at that tab, the reputation tab, and just be like, yeah, Dragonflight was awesome. I got all of this stuff done. I got all this stuff out of it, and at that point it was just like, all right, I'm seriously, literally, legitimately, totally done with anything I could possibly care about. Like, bring on the new stuff, and I'm not looking back at this point.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who played a lot more casually when it came to Dragonflight, I'll say, from my perspective, it was not one of my favorite expansions, simply because there was so overwhelming. It was not an expansion that I felt the people who really, really enjoyed that expansion were a lot more engaged in the day-to-day of that expansion. If you're someone who didn't play for a couple of weeks and then a patch came out and you hadn't really been paying too much attention to something, you started to feel like you fell behind in a pretty extreme way. And when you logged in, there was so much more new happening, which was good for the average player who was in there regularly. It just got a little bit overwhelming. So I am looking forward to War Within a lot more when it looks at its endgame loop, because they've talked about how they're going to try and avoid those sorts of things. Now, I'll preface this episode, because it's obviously going to be very War Within focused, with just the fact that we're not going to discuss spoilery stuff. We're not going to tell you what happens in the final chapter of the campaign quest. That's not something we're going to be ruining for anyone. So definitely get in there and play it yourself. But we will highlight some specific quests or things that you might not want to miss out on along the way, or things that we really enjoyed within our journey. It's going to be a slightly more front-loaded episode. Yes, we still have plenty to talk about what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, but we do want to mention what it was like for us as we leveled up characters and experienced that and whatnot. So I do want to preface just being like, hey, we're not going to be big spoilery situation where folks are feeling like they need to turn off the show because they haven't gotten in there yet or haven't gotten far enough yet or whatnot. And that was part of why I wanted to delay it until this morning, because it gave everyone last night to get in there and start playing it and start to feel that fever of content when it came in for that launch. So if you're someone who's worried about the spoiler stuff, you don't have to worry too much about that. Now, Jason, you and I both started out with early access. So what was your, how was your first impression of this early access situation?
Well, I really had a very smooth gameplay experience. You sort of buckle up, right, for any kind of WoW launch, especially a big one like a full expansion launch. It's like you just kind of assume there's going to be tech issues, there's going to be bottlenecks and log jams and stuff, but I really had nothing. I logged in maybe around, I don't know, 5 or 5:30 p.m. So, about a half hour or more out from early access getting pushed in NA, and I was online for 9 more hours or something. I think I played till about 3 a.m. I didn't have any interruptions. There was some like loot lagginess and stuff, like some server side lag, because I had low latency, low ping, but sometimes stuff would get kind of hung up, and there's been sort of this irritating behavior with quest giver NPCs where if they have like follow-up quests, they won't trigger, so you have to like walk 8 yards away from them and then walk back up to them, and then you can get the quest off of them. But like that is a super minor gripe compared to even, let's say, like the Dragonflight boat the first night, which was kind of a showstopper for a lot of people for the first couple hours. And the bug with dragon riding where the dragon would appear like on your head and then you couldn't fly and you couldn't dismount.
Well, it's hard to fly with a dragon on your head, Jason. Come on.
Yeah, right. Like it's not super aerodynamic to have a dragon attached to your head. So like I didn't encounter anything like that, nothing really kind of show stopping, which was great because I found the whole sort of intro experience and questing to be super immersive. The intro scenario is really like a blockbuster movie kind of start to the expansion. It's like a really big action set piece and kind of puts all the main characters for the story on the table, and you're playing through it, and they have some really great new tech with the in-game cinematics. There's parts where they come in a really dynamic way. It's not like, I mean, there are plenty of them throughout the campaign where you talk to a quest giver and you complete a quest and then the screen goes blank and then it plays an IGC, right?
Yeah.
But there are some in here where the screen just kind of dynamically shifts. Like you're controlling your character and then your UI drops out and the camera pans around and then the IGC starts. And that stuff is incredible. Like that sort of production value coming into WoW was really impressive. And then, the IGC tech continues to get better all the time. So obviously, like the new ones are really nice looking and they have a lot of cool dynamic camera moves and different shots that they haven't really done before. The characters seem, at least the models in not the like in-game engine scenes, but they have like more facial bones or something. There's a lot more facial expressions and stuff, and they just look great. So it really pulls you into the story right away. I think the way that they introduce and set up the Earthen just as like a culture just from the jump, and then the way that builds out throughout, really the whole expansion level up experience, it's incredible. I think it's like the best intro that they've done to a culture, especially like one we're going to play.
Yeah,
it makes me really anxious to play an Earthen, which I kind of wasn't as much before I actually played it.
Yeah, I want to jump in there because we're drifting out of just intro stuff and into other stuff that I really want to talk about, because I'm with you on the Earthen side of that. As far as early access for me it was do the initial intro scenario to where we basically dropped in beta, and then it was okay, give it the night, come back in the morning and start diving into it more. So I Friday morning was kind of my dive in playtime. And I will say that very early on, I did a particular quest campaign for Earthen, which was part of unlocking their allied race. And man, the amount of work that has gone into creating that race and culture, and not just a difference in their belief system, but also the class system and everything else involved around that is really interesting. I don't think it's spoilery to basically say like the Earthen have a really diverse and dynamic existence, and some of them believe in preserving their memory, almost like Altered Carbon, the like Netflix show where you'd put your memory away in a storage area. And some of them believe in, a natural end and not having that happen to them. And Others exist as worker bees, and they literally just have their memories wiped regularly, so they never remember who they are or what they're doing, and then just, essentially work with the way they need to work. And it's very interesting to play through some of these quest campaigns. The Unbound being the ones that I thought were probably the best of those quest campaigns. There's a lot of good ones, but if you dig into the Unbound and dealing with Morning Rise, that is a very, very cool quest campaign. It's really, really well done. It's one of my favorite things they've done with an allied race by far. So certainly check that out. As far as my experience went, though, it's been totally smooth. I've had no issues. The only issue I have, and this is a heads up for folks, is if you turn in a quest while standing next to a quest giver and attempt to pick up the next quest, and it won't let you pick it up, just walk away from them and then walk back up to them again. Apparently whatever's happening, what I assume is happening, is like the quest frame isn't 100% closing when it actually closes on your screen. And so by walking away, it forces it to close, and then you can go back over and pick up the next quest. That's the only bug I've run into consistently. Is I'll finish a quest chain, I will go to pick up the next quest, and it'll be like, I can't, it just won't let me. It won't pop up. It just won't let me. So I have to walk.
Yeah, I've been running in circles around quest giver NPCs quite a bit this week, but it happens.
It happens. So that's
pretty minor compared to stuff that we've had sort of persist through other expansion launches sometimes.
Yeah, it's easy to assume it's lag or something happening. It's not. Just walk away from the NPC, walk back up to it again. And I think it's just an issue with that quest pane closing that's taking place. So that's one of those things, man. Yeah. So from talking about the Unbound and talking about Earthen to talking about kobolds, I have to say probably one of my other favorite bump in reputations you can earn. Again, no spoilers, but if you haven't done kobold stuff, it's very cool. I love what they dig into. I love the lore they dig into. I love there's a quest chain. I'll highlight one quest chain people should do because I think it's hilarious. Is the kobold granny telling stories. I don't know if you've found this one yet, Jason, but oh my god, they have like
granny scribbles, and she has sort of fables basically that she tells the young kobolds, and like you play through them like as your character, and she sort of narrates what happened and like the lesson of the fable, and it's so incredibly well done, and the dialogue is so funny. I feel like the kobolds are so well realized, like they've been around since the earliest days of WoW, right? Like they were, if you play like a human, they're some of the first things you go fight when you're a level 1 character. But they were always sort of just these semi-intelligent, rat people, whatever. Like they weren't. They were sort of just this cannon fodder antagonist, and you knew they liked their candles and stuff, but that was sort of just like a joke, seemingly, or whatever. But now we see this like much more developed kobold society, and they're still like relatively like a semi-intelligent race. They're like beast people, right? Like they're sort of in that Quillbore category, or there's some other ones that are like they're not really like a developed advanced civilization, but they do have some degree of intelligence. But like getting a look into how that culture looks in a space like under the ground where they've really built it out, and sort of like the stresses and pressures on kobold society, and what a free kobold wants in terms of a lifestyle, right? And like just like putting so much context in take candle and what the candle really means to them and everything. And like I mean, there were moments where they were actually like really heartfelt with the kobolds, and also just some really fun kind of comedic parts. And that was a big surprise for me. I mean, I knew they were going to be involved. Obviously, they're heavily featured in the marketing and stuff, but I didn't think like the kobold storytelling was going to hit so many different kinds of beats for me. I think it's really great, and also brings in really cool props, like the rep vendor in Ringing Deeps, which has sort of, it's got like machine speaker kind of stuff, and it's got kobold stuff. It's sort of this, all these different peoples coming together to like sort of rebuild this society. And like one of the rep items you can get is these shoulders that are like these big pauldrons with these candles with all this melted wax coming off of them and stuff. It looks awesome. Like you fight the Candle King in one of the dungeons. He's got this like headdress on. It's all these candles that are like dripping down his back. Like, so it's added a lot of cool cosmetics and stuff too that we'll be able to collect throughout this expansion. So that was a really That was a big highlight for me. I loved all the kobold stuff.
Yeah, they highlight that wax is essentially gold to kobolds. That is their, like, it is a treasure. It's highly valued, and you can, whenever you collect it up, you can essentially exchange it with them for currency that you can then use with kobold vendors, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, like they don't even understand like why we like the shinies. They don't want the shinies. They just want the wax. So it's like the lifeblood of their civilization.
Exactly. It's such an interesting thing. So yeah, I would certainly check out the kobold stuff, and you'll enjoy it. You actually get to see a kobold like village, which is kind of amazing to see too. There's some really scenic spaces that you get to explore, and I guess we could touch on the world in general. It is phenomenal. It is massive, and man, when you start digging into the depths of the Ringing Deeps and whatnot, man, it just keeps going. Like, it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and you go through biome to biome to biome to biome, and you start meeting characters and having interactions with races that have never seen someone from above before, didn't know. That's part of the fable from the kobold stuff, is they didn't even know that there was stuff up there, right? Like, they've just never left the cave. That's where they've always lived, and so it's really interesting to come across all of this, and you'll certainly start tripping over some really interesting characters with all of this. So, like the Arathi being something that's huge and happening there, and there's a lot of neat characters you can sort of dive into that are buried in the deeps down there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of the overall like design and layout, first of all, the zones are incredibly gorgeous. Like I would say a big step forward even from Dragonflight, which was, I mean, there were moments in Dragonflight that are kind of breathtaking, right? Like that's when they brought in the extended view distance and everything, and that expansion kind of starts with, you run into I can't remember her name now, but your Draconid companion who ends up dying pretty early on in the process, but she's like taking you to that first outpost, and there's like a quest set up very specifically for you to see this like vista overlooking the waking shores, and it really looks nice. But I mean, I would say that these zones kind of put that to shame. Like Isle of Dorn is just an all-timer beautiful zone, and it's like the first place you spend time in. It's just it's like this really like gorgeous forested kind of island that then has these elaborate, like huge kind of Titan influenced earthen architecture cities all over it and stuff. And another thing that's really smart that they did, I was a little concerned about this going in terms of like locomotion between the zones, because I know that we're descending into like the heart of the planet, and like how do you express that in like an actual gameplay space? Well, I think the way they have it laid out, where actually like Isle of Dorn, Ringing Deeps, and Hallowfall are all actually quite close to each other, because you have the core way in the main hub city that takes you right to Ringing Deeps, and then you hang a left and the gate to Hallowfall is right there, and you descend further. Ajkahet's a little bit farther away, but if you progress through the story, you unlock a two-way portal between your hub in Ajkahet and in Dornegal in the Isle of Dorn. So like you can get around the world super fast very early on in the process, which rules.
There's also elevators that you unlock in some of the other areas. There's a bunch of different areas where you can unlock an elevator that involves you essentially oiling up a control and then using the control to be able to bring yourself back up to the surface, which is all very seamless to do. So there's a bunch of ways early on to get from the lower tiers of the world back up to the upper tiers. And what it really lets you realize, which like boggled my mind a little bit, was just how stacked this map is. Like just how one thing's on top of another thing on top of another thing. It also hit me yesterday when I realized there was an herb I wanted to herb that was through the ceiling inside one of the caves I was in. And I was like, oh, that must be in... Right. What's the zone that's right above me, right? Like that is the type of thing that starts to happen. And obviously that type of stuff will get bug fixed down the line so that you're not seeing that kind of thing. And it's really confusing as to where an herb is inside an area. But it was one of those realizations of like, man, they built this shaft that goes down to essentially a spiraling zone is what it basically is. So as you descend, you are descending in a circle, and descending in that circle means that you are underneath of other zones. So there's ways you can work your way back up that are, undiscovered. I'm waiting for there, and there might be, there might not be, but I'm waiting for there to be like a cavern in a ceiling of one of the lower zones that if you fly through and use your vigor properly, you can fly up to another zone out of a pit or something like that. I think would be amazing if they did something like that, because there's no reason why they can't with how stuff is actually laid out. It's very cool. I'm quite impressed with how they did that.
Yeah, I mean, in the past when we've had stuff where we're going underground or something like that, like sometimes there's some degree of kind of trickery there or something. But in this case, it seems like the zones are all actually like a connected space. And yeah, I mean, I would say it's reasonable to expect we'll get new zones as the expansion goes on. They typically do like 1 or 2 new zones at least, during an expansion. And we saw in Dragonflight when they sort of introduced this like subterranean tech that just the cracks in the ground opened up, and then we went to a new space. So I think it'd be cool if they ended up doing something maybe similar to that to introduce a new zone in this expansion. But yeah, I mean, I just can't really say enough about the overall zone design and the visuals. I mean, like, man, when you first get to Hallowfall, that's like kind of a really weird experience, because the Ringing Deeps is, and I guess just a quick aside, like the way I played through the expansion was I'm shooting for Lore Master, right, which you can't actually completely finish right now, but that means doing all the quests, basically, like all the main story quests, the quest line, the campaign, the ones with the icon around the exclamation point, and doing all the storylines from the regular exclamation point quests anywhere you find them. And not all of them feed into a storyline, but most of them do. So I did like all of Isle of Dorn, everything I could find to do, which you can't quite finish Sojourner, the side quest thing, in one pass because you got to go farther down. Then I did Ringing Deeps, and you can do all of Ringing Deeps like all at once, and Ringing Deeps is gigantic. There are so many side stories there and everything. I ended up hitting level cap. I was level 76 before I left Isle of Dorn, and then I hit level cap pretty quickly in Ringing Deeps, and I did like half the zone at 80. And then I still had 2 more zones to go. But so like Ringing Deeps is like, I mean, Isle of Dorn is, you're on the surface and it's, it's sunny, there's weather, whatever, there's plants and stuff. And then you get into Ringing Deeps, and like there's some plants and there's some stuff growing around, like where they have like water piped in, or there's like different runoff from the machines. It's like much more industrial, and it starts to feel a bit more like oppressive because you're underground the whole time. There is no like sky, like light source in the sky, and you're sort of you're getting increasing, like the Earthen are digging pretty deep, and as you progress the story, you're going into these really like ancient kind of places and structures that are underground too. You get to Hallowfall, and it's lit up by Belladar, the big crystal in the sky, and you walk through the gate, and the whole thing just opens up, and it looks like an outdoor zone, but like the fidelity is so incredible there. Like, I described it to a couple people as it looks like you're flying around in a painting of a WoW zone, but like it's actually the game. I mean, the leap in visual quality is just, it's so stark from Dragonflight, which already looked great, and that's the thing that just kept striking me every time I was exploring a new area.
What was really catching me about that, which you mentioned, was the light source in that space and things passing in front of it, and that casting a shadow across. I know this might be a computer graphics thing too, so if you do not have the ability to run stuff that is going on with this, I don't blame you at all. But basically, like one of those airships would pass in front of the crystal, and a shadow would pass across my screen, and like the whole lighting would change as that shadow happened. And I was left like literally like stopping for a moment, like looking around, being like, what just like something just changed, like it just got really dark really quick. And you notice the airship would like pass by, and then it would get bright again, and you're like, man, like that's crazy. that literally is like, I was in water doing a quest, and the light changed so much that I stopped what I was doing and looked around to be like, something just happened. What just happened? That was going on. Yeah.
We're kind of conditioned as players that like when there's a big shadow over your head that something bad is happening, but not necessarily in that zone. And like if you notice, there's like all this vegetation in the zone and stuff, and like there's these big like kind of sunflower looking things and stuff, and they all kind of tilt toward Belladar, like no matter where they are in the zone, like they're all tilted towards that one source because it never moves, right? So like it's always like embedded in the ceiling of the cavern. And in Hallowfall we meet the Arathi, who are like this sort of bizarre, offshoot of they belong to the Arathi Empire, which apparently still exists somewhere that we don't know about. And
well, across the seas is
across the seas
all we get from Anduin is that across the seas, and you're like, oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah,
there's a whole thing over there somewhere.
So they're out there somewhere, and the Emperor sent them on some expedition based on some prophecy, and they got stuck in this cave. But via mysterious circumstances about like a generation ago, and so they've sort of like built this version of their society under there. But there's something like a bit sinister about the Arathi to me. Like, they're obviously heroic characters and good guys or whatever you want to think of these characters as, like, but there's something even among like the heroic characters, it's like a bit fanatical about the way they've sort of arranged their society. So I have a feeling that that's going to continue to play out over maybe many years. Like I doubt this is like our only look at the Arathi people. I don't think that's how it's going to happen. But one really cool thing you get introduced to there is the Kobus, which are awesome new bad guys. They're like humanoid fish, but not like Murlocs. They're like werefish, they actually are built on like Worgen skeletons, right? Like they don't change, but like they're sort of like anglerfish type things, but they're like, humanoid ones, but they also have they have like necromancers and stuff, and they have this really cool like death magic that looks like the Maldraxxus sort of VFX, like the swirling green stuff. And a really nice touch with them is they use Arathi as like bait. So you'll see an NPC that looks like a friendly NPC fisherman or something, but it's actually like a Kobus has like stolen this body and propped it up, and they're under the ground waiting to ambush you. And I thought that was such a cool touch. And they're just awesome looking, like super gross monster bad guys. And I thought that was a great addition. They're one of my favorite like new creatures in this expansion. They're just fun to fight.
There's some very cool things they did, with Kobus and with all of that. I really enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed that zone, and then obviously I went to Ashkahet, which I'm probably a third of the way through Ashkahet. I still have to go back and do a lot of side questing inside Ringing Deeps as well as Hallowfall. I basically cleared the first zone, and then I realized very quickly, if I keep doing this, I'm going to end up essentially where Jason ended up and be like, I have not completed the main storyline yet. And I am max level, and I need to keep doing that, which is not a bad thing. It's just about how you're playing. For me, my goal very early on was I want to unlock the Earthen race as fast as I can because I want to make an Earthen. And I was very disappointed to find out that you have to complete the entire campaign for the opening campaign for the game as one of the steps to do that. And so far, I've been pretty disappointed with the fact that after you actually leave that sort of first zone area and go into the Ringing Deeps, and you do some of the Ringing Deeps, has some things about it there that I think make sense for unlocking an allied race. Where Ringing Deeps kind of ends, what happens at the end of that, I thought, okay, this would be a really good point to introduce the allied race. Like basically the capstone of that makes perfect sense to me to go, okay, this is how your Earthen comes to being. This would make sense. So I'm frustrated in the sense that like I want people to be able to get in and play an Earthen as quick as they possibly want to play an Earthen. It's possible to hit max level inside of Ringing Deeps. Ringing Deeps was the logical place for me so far storyline wise, and obviously I'll keep playing through Ashkahet, see what else gets involved and whether it makes sense to actually have the Earthen more involved in this, because basically Enter Hallowfall and the Earthen just like aren't involved other than potentially asking for help from the Earthen for supplies or something. Like that's like the most you kind of have happen inside Hallowfall. And you go into Ashkahet and they're just not involved at all from what I can tell so far. So I wish that we could have not had that aspect of a barrier for people making an Earthen, because you're so involved in them early on. I just wish that you could, if you wanted to, you could go, yep, you know what, I want to save the rest of this for when I'm traveling through as my Earthen, as opposed to I want to save just as opposed to going, hey, yeah, no, I need to just finish off the main story so that I can finally make the character that I want to play for the expansion or whatever it is, right? Like that. Right. That's an unfortunate thing to me as far as a barrier goes.
I mean, to me, that's just a weakness of the allied race system, and I think there could have been a way to tell a story of like, okay, just give us playable Earthen with the box, so to speak, right? Whether or not you actually have a box. So like just, day one, you can get in and make an Earthen and then have, a bespoke starting experience for them that explains why maybe this particular cache of Earthen they've awoken to an unfamiliar world or something, right? And so something has gone wrong with the process, and they're somewhere that the rest of their society doesn't expect them to be, and they're discovered. Like you could weave the story in, right?
And then, I'm with you. Yep.
And so it's like then this cache of Earthen is meeting the Khazalgar Earthen at the same time that the Alliance and Horde are, and then I think you would maybe because I agree with you. Like I mean, I love the end of Ringing Deeps, like the campaign there. It's incredible, and the in-game cinematic that closes it out is like, what a roller coaster, man. One of the just beautiful storytelling, and it looks great. Like the just the visuals and are so good. It's not in engine. It's it's a little bit beefed up from the engine, and it's just incredible. And that would be the perfect place to be like, okay, I mean, it is sort of the impetus for like why there are more Earthen at that point. So like, and so it is the reason why we'll be playing them, right? So I don't know. It's just the allied race system is not good, and I wish they would stop doing it. Just I mean, I guess it is more work to have to then build that starting experience, right? But I mean, the Earthen must have one. I don't know. We'll find out, and we'll find out next week. But
anyways, my hope was that I'd be able to actually make an Earthen and get playing through an Earthen early this week, but it's looking like it's going to be a little bit later this week by the time I actually get through the storyline stuff, because I'm not rushing it. I am reading all of the quest text for the stuff that I'm doing. I am paying attention to story markers, which is real important. And something else, this is a huge tip for anyone out there who is currently playing through the campaign who cares at all about the story, right? If you're playing this and you care at all about the story, this is a massive thing you should be doing. Every time you turn in a major story quest, talk to the people around you in that situation. Like, click on the characters and read what they have to say. Because one of the big stories that I'm following personally is what's going on with Anduin. And he has something different to say after every single story quest happens. And if you don't just stop and click on him to see what text box pops up, you're missing out on really large details as to what's going on with him. I was very surprised that they chose to do it that way, because it's not something that's very intuitive, right? You go up, you got the big quest marker, you turn it in, you read what that says, you read what the next quest says, Anduin's just sort of, standing there next to you, nothing's going on, and you leave. And what you didn't realize is when you actually arrived there, you could have talked to Anduin, you could have then turned in the quest and talked to Anduin, you could have then picked up the quest and then potentially talked to Anduin again, and he would have said 3 different things, all story-based for his character, which is like, holy crap, there's so much story built into this that people could just walk past and have no idea happens there.
Yeah, then you finish the quest line, and then there's a stay a while and listen voice acted exchange between him and another. I mean, like, there is so much writing and so much production value in telling the story in multiple different ways, right? Stuff that just plays out as you quest, or stuff you kind of discover along the way on a quest. All the dialogue, and I mean, most of the main characters have multiple different dialogue options throughout any quest chain, like as you go through. And then the voice acting stuff, the various types of cutscenes that they put in there, and scripted events. Like, I think that's really striking about the way this expansion has come off so far, is that the production value just seems to be really leveled up. They're telling the story in a lot of different ways, and there seems to be like more cohesion overall among the different stories that are being told. And also the way that they're expressing it, again, the production value is just so high compared to maybe what we're used to in the past. Now, maybe this is the Final Fantasy 14 effect, right? Like 14 is sort of renowned for being like the MMO RPG with a really strong story, and it's very engaging. And, 14 has certainly had a moment these last few years where it's really ascended in popularity and prominence, and WoW was on the decline for a few years. And I think the competition is good for people who play any MMORPG, because if you're smart at developing your game, you're going to crib stuff from other games that work. That's how game development has sort of always worked across all genres. So I think part of the WoW team like sort of turning the ship around and getting moving in the right direction the last few years. A lot of it is listening to players, and kind of presenting more attractive experiences for players to spend their time on, and also like looking around at the state of the marketplace, the landscape, and saying like, all right, what are other games doing that works? I mean, that's how WoW started. It was Blizzard's EverQuest. That was the whole point to begin with, right? And then like, how can we do this in our own way and make this cool? And I do think 14 probably had some impact on how storytelling is front and center in this expansion. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I think that's great. Like, because players respond to that and it's really cool. And Blizzard's really good at that kind of stuff when the resources are invested into it. So I think being, looking around and being realistic about the state of the market is a good game development choice. And it's paid off so much. I mean, like, I can't say enough about it. It's just every element of it feels so leveled up, even from where we were at in Dragonflight the last 2 years, which I thought was exceptionally strong.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much work has gone into this. Like, you can just tell on so many levels, not just the passion about the people creating it, but the actual effort that goes into it. So I want to be sure that people didn't miss out on that opportunity, no matter who your companion is you're traveling with, whether it's Illyria or I haven't tried the Horde side stuff yet, so I'm curious what's going on in Horde side yet. I do know I get to work alongside some Horde side characters, which is pretty cool. I started bumping into that recently, which was nice. I just feel like we're in a situation now where you have to, if you care about the story or you're invested in it, I don't want people to miss out on things just because they didn't think of, I never thought of like turning in a quest and then talking to Illyria and picking up the next quest and then talking to Illyria and then doing that quest and then talking to Illyria, like or finding her inside of a city, right? Like, you're at a city, you know that she's around, she's gone up on a parapet or something somewhere, and you're doing, you're helping someone cut up fish or something like that for like a menial task for making a meal for someone or whatever it is. And you're like, wait a minute, is she around? Yes, she is here. Okay, well, what does she have to say, right? Like, that's suddenly another situation where you're like, oh, here's another interesting bit of dialogue that took place. So it's neat to feel like there's those threads you can pull on and that really bring the world to life of, yes, these characters are living characters who, as they see other interactions take place or as the story progresses and they're living through it, they have different thoughts about what they're actually experiencing and what's happening with them. So yeah, that's not something I want people to miss out on. But yes, overall, I'm thrilled with it so far. I'm obviously 80, and I am looking forward to doing more and more of this questing. I haven't finished the main story yet, so I want to finish that up. I want to start an Earthen. I want to dig into the Earthen stuff a bunch. I might use my boost on the Earthen, which I'm tempted to do, just to get that up to max level, so I can actually dig more into the gearing aspect of it. I've done a few delves. I did a tier 3 delve, was sort of the highest that I've done so far on my character. Solo with, obviously just with Bran. It took me a while to figure out that the items that you get for Bran for delves are things you use that are in your inventory that then teach Bran how to do it, so then you can equip it. So for the first 2 delves that I didn't have a second item equipped on Bran because I didn't know that when I had finished the previous delve, I had looted something that went into my inventory. So just be aware of that. If you're like, wow, is this just like a UI thing that's broken, or like what's happening with this, or maybe I just haven't acquired one of these yet, even though I've unlocked the ability to acquire one. It's probably just somewhere in your bags is a thing that you need to click on to teach Bran something to be able to put in there. So that was a learning experience. I hadn't played around with that yet, so that was good to see. And yeah, now that heroics are open, obviously people are starting to dive into heroic dungeons and explore heroic dungeons and start getting the gearing towards that. But I wouldn't, anyone who doesn't feel like they need to rush, I wouldn't be rushing anything at the moment. Again, once season 1 kicks off, all those item levels spike up again. So you're going to get it, like right now, I think heroic is 13 item levels above normal. It's going to go up to being 26 item levels above normal the moment season 1 starts. So if you're like, oh, I need to catch up on gearing, well, you'll be 13 item levels behind, and then you'll have that 26 item level jump for something that's the same difficulty as it was, this week as it is to next week kind of situation. So don't stress too much over that. Take the time you need this week to level. It's worth exploring and worth checking out stuff. There's lots of little secrets. I've found treasures that then led to quest chains that then led to like all sorts of things that are out there. So there's plenty to explore, and be sure you're taking it all in because it's massively enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, we're about to be in maintenance, I guess, as we're speaking right now. And, when we come out of that, we'll be in our semi first, proper reset of the expansion, but there's a lot of stuff that still isn't available yet. So it is definitely still not time to rush. We have 2 weeks of like very gentle sort of power progression. I do want to touch on Ajkahet briefly. I know you haven't completed it yet, so I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go over the top. But like, I was really impressed with the zone on a level that I wasn't really expecting. I think the zone really shines through the side stories and the different characters that you meet, and because there's a lot of palace intrigue going on in Ajkahet, and that's it. Like there's an easy comparison to make to Suramar. It doesn't necessarily feel like that to play because it's just not laid out, and the stakes aren't the same as in Suramar from Legion. But the whole idea of the palace intrigue and the the queen is doing something that maybe not everybody likes, and the power structure's been shaken up there, and that gives us an opportunity to find new allies. Like, they do a lot of really cool stuff with that in the storytelling, and seeing sort of that Nerubian architecture, which really has that goes straight back to Warcraft 3 in a lot of ways, and it has ties to sort of the cult of the damned and stuff like that. Seeing it like rendered in this kind of fidelity, I mean, it just looks incredible, and there's just so many there's so many weird nooks and crannies in the story there, and it's where you meet the Harrenir for the first time, which they don't really factor in a whole lot right now, but you get the feeling that maybe they're like the focal point of an entire patch. They're like, I don't know. They're sort of like trolls, and they're sort of like elves. They're sort of elf trolls, They're sort of maybe they're the point that the trolls and elves sort of branched off of, or something, or there's some way that they came together, sort of like the Arathi with the humans and the high elves.
I got the impression they were like troll druids, is what I got the impression around. But that's again just from early impressions.
Right. Well, like the female characters you run into look more like trolls, and the males look more like the males are just straight up built on night elf skeletons, but they have kind of different features. But yeah, like they're very mysterious. They remain that way. I'm sure they're not going to be that mysterious as we move through the War Within, or maybe the World Soul Saga itself. But I think the way they come in is really cool, and your character sort of navigating all these different civilizations to begin with, and now you have the Arathi sort of bumping into the Harrenir, and there's weird tensions there. So just a lot of really cool storytelling opportunities there, with all these different elements in the pot, and a lot of them are unfamiliar to the player, right? Like, we're learning about this stuff alongside the characters that we're interacting with, and I think the way that's all come together is really strong. I'm blown away by the overall presentation and the story and level up experience, and not being able to finish Lore Master is kind of a bummer. It's probably going to be not this reset today, but next reset, when you can finally finish that last storyline in Halifal. But like, it doesn't matter that much, because the whole point was like, I know this is a ton of content that I want to chunk through while I have the opportunity, because I'm not going to want to backtrack on it later. And so like, I did 99.9+% of that, which feels really nice. I mean, there's some really great stuff too. And I forgot to mention with the Niffin and Venture.co, like having Venture.co factor back into the story is really funny, and I love the Niffin. I thought they were a great inclusion in Dragonflight. So to have that direct through line, because it makes sense, right? Like Zaralek Cavern was sort of a little bit of a sneak preview of some of the stuff we are going to get into in War Within. We didn't know it at the time, but so bringing the Niffin back in is really cool too. There's so many cool elements on the table for this expansion, and I mean, in terms of the content, like I made a point to do all 12 of the delves that you can initially do. And I think for the most part, they mostly come off really well. There's a couple that I don't really love, and there's a change we'll talk about that I think will make some of those a bit better. But so I've only played Prot Warrior, really. I played a tiny little bit of Brewmaster last night. Like, I finally got in on the alt. I got him to 71 and I did one delve, and that was fine. But like, I've mostly been playing Prot Warrior, and I've only been playing Mountain Thane. I haven't messed with Colossus yet. But Mountain Thane was the thing I was really excited for, it just in terms of the theming, and it's also very streamlined in terms of gameplay because it doesn't add any new buttons. So it just kind of makes you better at what you're already doing. And it's really fun to use in these multi-target situations in delves and dungeons, because you just have like lightning strikes going off everywhere, and you get like a talent that You generate more rage when you get your procced, plussed up thunderclap that turns into thunder blast, and then so it keeps your throughput really high, which is super fun early in an expansion when your gear stinks, and you have a lot of haste. So, the delves all have sort of these different stories to tell. They're really tied into, whatever. Not even so much like the zone that they're in, but the locale that they're in, because there's different enemy types or whatever. There's different objectives that are really tied into the local story that's being told, which is a nice touch. I mean, it's expected, but it's a nice touch.
Yeah, often you'll have a local story that almost capstones with go into the delve and do this thing in the delve. Which makes perfect sense. And the delve is often like right there, and you just happen to be next to it, and you're like, oh, there's the delve right there. I'll just wander into this, and then you're suddenly thrown into basically a dungeon experience, which is pretty neat thing to sort of walk in and do. So I was very pleased with how seamless that was involved into things. I don't want to dive too deep. I don't want to dive too deep into delves yet, because I know people are still getting in and checking them out. So next week, I think will be a larger delve talk about that sort of thing. And we do still have a lot of show to cover. Yeah. And I know Jason has a hard out, so I don't want to drift too long with our 50-minute intro that we're doing here.
Right. The show is mostly intro today.
So that's why I was emphasizing that. But yeah, no, I think it's really neat. Be in the world, explore the world, check the world out. Lots of cool stuff. Very happy about it. The only other thing I wanted to mention about this, it's fairly safe to assume something has happened to Dalaran as far as this goes, based off of what people have experienced or beta or whatever it is. But you run into those characters from Dalaran throughout this world, which is really fun to do. There is a quest where you need to essentially help people inside Dalaran. And I will say that my experiences with those characters did define who I was choosing to help. They're like, you need to help 10 people. And you're like, okay, I'm going to help 10 people in Dalaran. You watch the dots appear on your minimap and you're like, there's 40 people I can help. Well, which ones do I have an actual character connection with that I actually want to go and see? Right. And which ones I'm like, I really don't like you. You've always been kind of mean to me. I'm not going to help you out inside this situation. I thought it was kind of neat to be able to give people a real variety of options. That was fun. So, yeah.
Well, tying that back into Legion Dalaran, I think, with the order halls and stuff and some characters from that was really smart. I mean, that you have them, they exist. Why not? Why not tie them back in? That continuity is really satisfying to players who have stuck with the game for over the years.
Yeah, I love running into familiar characters. All right, with that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, so we don't really know what's going on this week. I'm just kidding. There's some things happening we can talk about. There's nothing in the calendar for this week. Obviously, we don't know what the actual weekly wrapper kind of quest is going to be, or the PvP quests, or anything like that. This is still, we're in maintenance at this moment. Maintenance started a minute ago, so we're in maintenance at the moment. Now, PvP Brawl is scheduled to be Deepwind Dunk. So if you're someone who enjoys Deepwind Dunk, that's the brawl you get to look forward to this week. That is essentially you heading in to test out your dunk ball skills. In the center of Deepwind Gorge, there's basically a place where you collect balls and you take them out to the southern mines, and you essentially dunk the ball at the mines, and then you go back and you do it again. And that is this brawl. It is a actual better version than the dealing with minecart, dragging it around, 4 points bizarroness that is Deepwind Gorge. So I prefer Deepwind Dunk. So if you're interested in earning yourself some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor, that's what you got to look forward to this week. When it comes,
it's a good one, and it's not against bots though, so you will have to fight against other players this week.
Yes, that's true. That's right. So much has happened between now and our last episode. I forgot that was Arathi was the last one that had that.
Comp Stomp did not factor in for me last week. It didn't even cross my mind to get in there into it. I was a little busy. I was a little preoccupied.
Yeah. Darkmoon Fair is starting. I actually had a moment yesterday where I paused and thought to myself, oh yeah, that's right. Darkmoon Fair kicks off in 4 days. So FYI, if you're someone who's worried about getting more reputation gains, leveling up faster, all of those sorts of things, Sunday, the 1st of September is when, oh my God, it's so weird to say September, is when the Darkmoon Fair kicks off. It's going to run until the 7th. And yes, we have to assume that profession knowledge will play a factor in all of this. and that this is something that you are going to want to be doing. So be sure you check out Darkmoon Faire starting up this coming Sunday. See if you can actually earn profession knowledge towards War Within. I would hope you could. It's how it worked in Dragonflight. I presume it's going to be the same going forward, and folks will be getting that. There's also going to be obviously Darkmoon Faire tokens you can earn if you want to get your dynamic flight dirigible that allow you to soar around in a zeppelin with all of the fancy flying that you can do now. Or if you're someone who wants to get yourself some achievements done, that sort of thing, you can do that too. As well as, I don't know if Darkmoon Faire trinkets are a thing yet, but they certainly probably will be. So that's when the fair kicks off. So I haven't found any Darkmoon cards yet. I don't know if that's what they're doing this time around, or
they're
how
out
they're
there.
doing it.
Yeah, they exist. The question is going to be, are the Darkmoon deck trinkets desirable? And that I'm not sure about at this moment in time. But there are new cards, and this will be, I guess, a chance to assemble some new decks. To a couple quick thoughts on Darkmoon Faire. The profession, really, as it relates to professions. I mean, I assume we're going to have bonus profession knowledge. So if you have a profession, make sure you go do this. Starting Sunday, early morning. The knowledge points are so valuable at the outset of an expansion, and it's so easy to get them. You just have to remember to go do it. Go to your factions Darkmoon Faire hub and go get this done, and get your points. One thing I wanted to mention about professions is that we sort of have now, we've been through how professions worked in Dragonflight, and there is no incredibly large rework to that system in War Within. So this means that we know how to do it a bit better. So one thing I would highly recommend, if you have a crafting profession and you haven't yet kind of started the journey, or you haven't done this yet, you can filter your recipes for everything that has a first craft bonus. You want to really highly prioritize making all of that stuff first, because all of that will grant you 1 knowledge point apiece.
Good
so
tip.
that was one of the first things I did. I was mining my way through the whole level up, and I would take a break and go back to Dornagal and, okay, let me go hang out at the table. All right, what do I have that has first craft? Okay, let me make whatever I can out of the stuff I picked up, and just stack up a whole bunch of knowledge points. And you'll get skill points too on most of these recipes. So it's kind of a nice double whammy, but it's actually more important overall for your development of your profession, if you're a crafter, to get all those first craft bonus points versus skilling up on something you can quickly make a whole bunch of. Because the knowledge is way harder to get than the skill when it comes down to it. And also, there is an element that the less knowledge you have, it puts you at a competitive disadvantage in the overall profession marketplace. If you're trying to make money, you need the knowledge, because you need the recipes, and you need to be able to make the high ranks of stuff. So yeah, definitely use that, and do not forget about Darkmoon Faire. Probably for the next 6 months, make sure that Darkmoon Faire is on your radar to get those points, because it really pays off. One other thing about Darkmoon Faire is it was confirmed that the prize tickets are warband currency. So you can slide them around to one character and make a big old pile if you're working on the dirigible or some other thing you want to buy with them. So that's a really nice inclusion. And maybe if you were grinding for that is just way too long of a commitment, if you have a bunch of characters, maybe this is a way to really just zero in on that during Darkmoon Fairs and just, run a bunch of characters through and combine all the tickets.
Yeah. All right, Hotfixes. Warband mentoring can now be canceled for those who don't want to have the additional experience bonus from Warband mentoring. Jason, do you want to talk about what Warband mentoring is for folks? Yeah,
so it's weird that I don't know how this was cancelable, and I don't know why they don't. I can't contextualize this for you, but what I can tell you is that Warband Mentor is an XP buff that you get when a character reaches max level.
It's 5% more experience,
per character, stacking up to 20%, I believe. So, your first character dings 80, and then you unlock this benefit. Your second character just has a baseline 5% XP buff in War Within content. When they ding 80, now it's 10% for your third character, and so on up to 20%. So that's a really nice benefit.
Actually. Goes up
25. So so your first 5, stack up this bonus, and then you just have that sitting there on every character that you do from there on. Yeah, I'm not sure why you would want to cancel that buff specifically, but you can't do it anymore anyway. I don't know how you were doing it. I don't know if it appears in your buffs and like you could click it off. I don't think it does, but yeah, I don't know. This is a couple of these around the character XP. It left me kind of scratching my head.
Yeah, I think the cancelable thing simply came down from them wanting. But I guess it doesn't really matter because you should be able to just turn off experience gain for people who didn't want to actually level up anymore, and for people who want like a vanilla experience. I don't know why the 5% would bother you that much in the live game, because you're already getting a very different experience than you would be from any kind of classic situation, with a lot of different things changing. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand why it could be canceled before, but it can no longer be canceled. So just don't worry if you're someone who like accidentally turned off your warband mentoring and weren't sure how to turn it back on or what happened with it. They fixed that. All right, they also fixed an issue that allowed players to disable experience gain at level 70 instead of the intended 69 and below. Yeah, that's just, you know, a weird one, but someone flubbed a number and there it is. Go ahead.
I do have like one thought on this, which
Sure.
like this kind of sucks because it wasn't communicated beforehand. So like if you wanted to cap your character for whatever reason, maybe it was for PvP brackets or some reason that you wanted to cap your character.
Oh, it's 69. Yeah.
Yeah, like there was no advance notice of this like at all anywhere. So, you know, now if you leveled that character to 70, now you got to make a new one, I guess, and start back over and then turn off XP gain at 69. I don't, you know, there are, I guess, some edge cases where you would want to do that and have that character capped like in sort of Dragonflight era. Yeah, and if you took that character to 70 and thought you were going to cap it, you can't now, and that can be super inconvenient in some very specific situations. And it's unfortunate that this wasn't like, hey, by the way, here's what we're thinking for 11.0 and level 80 and XP caps.
Yeah, there was also a hotfix that went in for raid buffs to make raid buffs more equal across varied group compositions. We're reducing the effectiveness of Arcane Intellect and Chaos Brand from 5% to 3%. We feel this will improve the balance of caster heavy versus melee heavy groups when participating in non-raid content. So, yep, just as a heads up, those raid buffs are getting a tweak, and that's something that players will have to get used to and get adapted to. We did see some class...
Like, they're still good. Like, obviously, you still want them if you got them, but I think, you know, part of the problem here, like, I mean, they spell it out, but, like, really, those buffs are, like, extremely good and sort of lean you into this comp of, like, what if we have a demon hunter and a bunch of magic damage, right? Like it's sort of and I think tamping that down just a little bit is probably fine. Plus, I have to laugh when mages get upset. That's all.
Well, I mean, yeah, it went from 5% increased intellect to 3%, so it is a noticeable difference for a lot of caster classes out there. Same thing with Chaos Brand, but it does put you in a situation where essentially, you're not leaning into, oh my god, there's like 12 classes we have to have inside of every raid group to be able to have the right raid composition, to be able to do the right thing, to be able to defeat the boss. And you know, that is something that I like that they lean away from. I don't want homogenization where every class is the same, but I do want it to be a situation where the difference between bringing 2 warriors and bringing a warrior and a rogue isn't something that's like, oh geez, if we don't have a rogue, then we just shouldn't raid tonight. Like that should not be a situation. And Demon Hunter was in that position for a lot of teams where, we don't have a Demon Hunter. Wow. We just have 5% less damage from our top end DPSers because we have 6 casters or 7 casters in the raid. And you're like, that is a huge damage difference across the board for a raid situation. I remember feeling it back, you know, when I was doing Mythic Raid. You could feel how much longer a boss lived when there wasn't a Demon Hunter there to put up Chaos Brand. And you're like, that shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing.
It's like a tough line to walk, right? Yeah. Because you do want the classes to bring something unique to the table and to, you know, kind of have their own identity. But then you run into, I mean, it's the very old bring the player, not the class adage from forever ago. And trying to balance those two things out is not, it's a hard job. And so, you know, these buffs are coming back a little bit. It's hard for me to contextualize without seeing how some of the higher end content tuning really feels. Like you're not going to feel this in heroic dungeons right now. You just kind of stomp through them if you have decent gear and know how to play your class. So
yeah.
You know, we'll have to assess as season 1 kind of rolls on.
Now, there are other class little hotfixes and changes that happen to them. We're going to bounce through those for the interest of time, but if you want to check out the hotfix notes, you'll see if something affected you in particular. Most likely, you're not going to notice a lot of the changes that took place. They're fairly small things that happen, but feel free to poke around at it. I personally am still learning what my class does with the new changes to talents and the hero talents and how things are sort of adapting and what actually is a reasonable amount of damage to be doing based off of item level upgrades I'm getting that are in some cases like 20 or 30 item levels over what I was wearing. So I'm not noticing some of the tweaks that they did yet, but I'm sure some folks will want to have a peek at that.
Yeah, a lot of what they're doing is bug fixing, right?
Yeah.
Like that. I think that's the number one. That's probably job one right now. Is just squashing bugs and removing unintended behavior because they're just not going to have the data to do any kind of decent tuning yet, and probably won't until we start actually getting into the raid. But yeah. Definitely a bunch of, class related bug fixes going out.
Yeah. Delves, Bran should no longer sometimes get stuck flying on his Griffin into a wall. Yay.
I feel like I'm glad that they did this, but I feel like Bran should do that sometimes. That seems like a Bran thing to do, right? Like he crashed his Griffin into a wall. Would you bat an eyelash at that in the story? Like, no, you don't want that to happen in your Delve, but I'm just saying, like, that is kind of Bran's identity.
I wouldn't want that to happen, but what I would want to have happen every now and then that I think would be hilarious is when he sets up a little campfire to sort of rest by and have a meal, which is something he does when he's a DPS spec. And I don't know if he does in the healing one. I've never played one with him as a healer. But he sets that up. If he just, hung out there a bit longer than he should, right? You get into the next pull or whatever, and he's still back there having a meal and, telling a story or whatever it is, sitting by the campfire. I can see him getting a bit lost in that and not really paying attention to the fact that you've moved on. You've gotten your well-fed 10-minute buff by sitting at that campfire long enough. You've now moved on, and he should really, catch up. That would be great. So we also saw a few delves get some fixes done to them as well, which I saw got a really positive reactions out of our Discord, which was good. So folks that might have been struggling with some delves or were having some bad unintended amounts of damage happening, it is something that got resolved. I know one of those was the spore bits now die upon exploding is something that you want to be aware of.
Oh, thank you.
That's a big one.
This was about to become a big problem because the spore bits there's a couple like mushroom themed dungeons that have these spore bit things in them, and the idea is like, they explode and do damage and knock stuff back from them, which like you could theoretically use offensively, but it's not really worth it. And they explode and then they would reform and then they would come right after you, even they were like yellow mobs. And if you had a bleed on them or something, forget it. Like they're just chasing you around forever, and the explosion radius is really big. So this was a big headache for early access players doing those delves. Like it just felt really bad. Like, make no mistake, delves have a lot of Torghast DNA, but don't let that put you off. Like they're really fun, and they tell different kinds of stories, very varied environments that look cool, and they have like pretty fun gameplay mechanics. They're also like relatively low pressure overall. But if your first experience with one was like the spore bits and fungal folly, and you're like, oh, here we go, here's Torghast traps or whatever. So the good thing is they changed this very quickly because I mean delves are supposed to be this bite-sized kind of fun stuff to do for most players, and having something in there that was that obnoxious wasn't the move. So good job changing that really quickly.
Yeah. We also saw that apparently all dungeon damage from enemies was reduced by 7% in Mythic and Mythic Plus difficulties, which we don't have access to for 2 weeks. I'm just putting that out there. So that's just, one of those things where you're like, all right, I guess that change took place, and that was probably based off of beta testing or some other testing that took place. So just keep that in mind, as well as all dungeon enemy health has been increased by 10% on Heroic. So Heroics are going to feel a little bit harder when it comes to this sort of thing. And apparently the Tyrannical affix is still something they're playing around with. The health increases on boss was reduced by 5%. So bosses will have 5% less damage once Tyrannical goes live. They also reduced the health and damage of all Battle for Azeroth raid bosses by approximately 40%. So if you're someone who wants to go back and do BFA bosses in your soloable content to get transmog and whatnot, they just got 40% easier to drop. And in Shadowlands ones, they just got 65% easier to drop. So if you want to go back and farm some of these older raids, you can go back and do that substantially easier now. Good things to see for those transmog collectors out there. or some achievement hunters, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So,
especially in the warband era, right?
Yep.
That makes it even better. And yeah, I love to see these Mythic Plus changes, and just the 7% damage reduction across the board, and the tyrannical health decrease is huge. I think those seem like great changes to start off with. One of the big bummers at the outset of any season is like that first tyrannical week when you're in like super low gear and the boss is alive for 5.5 minutes, like it just feels awful. And there's no real, like it turns the bosses into endurance tests more than tests of skill. It's like, how many times can you sit through doing this correctly? And that just doesn't feel good. So chunking that down a little bit, I think it's a great place to start the season. And hopefully something to keep an eye on, if we're going to live in a world where the higher end dungeons have fortified and tyrannical every week, then it needs to feel fair to play against, in my opinion.
Yeah. All Dragonflight Profession first craft experience bonuses no longer apply to characters who are level 70 or above. So if you're someone who was trying to sneak in some cheeky skill up stuff for your current professions because you're still level 70 when you're doing stuff, but you're technically inside War Within, that's no longer a thing. They caught that pretty early. All Artisans' acuity has been removed from first-time crafters bonus trainers taught recipes in War Within, so keep that in mind as well. And all Artisans' acuity has been removed from gathering journal bonus discoveries as well. An additional 150 Artisans' acuity has been added to the one-time reagent bag players receive from completing the crafting to order quest that you actually can do out there. So you'll get a bunch from that. When it comes to enchanting, they actually disabled enchanting weekly quests that were unintendedly available during the early access. So just so you're aware, those all got disabled, and so that's why they were up for a moment and then gone. Basically, they said they've disabled the quests, and they're increasing the knowledge available to enchanters who didn't complete them, starting after the first weekly reset. So that's this coming reset that's happening right now. The extra knowledge will come from knowledge point items sourced through disenchanting, and will leave all enchanters on an even playing field. This extra knowledge will become available after you have gathered your other weekly knowledge, weekly enchanting knowledge, which includes the weekly quest, disenchanting knowledge, and knowledge obtained from treasures out in the world. So yeah, they basically said, oops, this was a mistake, this shouldn't have happened, but don't worry, we've come up with a really easy system for you to essentially catch up and be in the same boat as everybody else. And that's just while you're disenchanting those quest items that you can't sell or do anything with when it comes to, out in the world stuff. You could sell for some gold if you wanted to, but while you're disenchanting them, you'll be gaining back the knowledge that essentially some people might have gotten from world quests out there. So don't stress over that. There aren't a select few enchanters who bought the bonus to enchanting knowledge or whatever it is inside that first week. You did not miss out on that.
Yeah, essentially you just got to catch it up is the only thing to keep in mind. What we need, I don't have one yet. I gotta look for one today because now it's a thing. They spell out the knowledge obtained from treasures.
Yeah,
that is like a huge part of skilling your profession up on a weekly basis in these these post Dragonflight profession expansions. So if you're new to professions, since that rework, keep that in mind. There's a certain amount of knowledge you will get each week from opening treasures and whatnot in the outdoor world. I used to have this highly convenient week aura that would track my progress for the week. It was just like a checklist on the side of the screen, and it would, it would count down as I collected all this stuff, and then it would disappear. And while I was working on skilling up Dragonflight professions, it came in incredibly handy. So I need to get one of those for War Within to make sure I'm not missing anything. The first couple weeks, maybe even month or two of the expansion, I didn't really know about it, and I just kind of would grab stuff wherever, and oh, cool, I got some knowledge. That's if you're serious about your professions, which I'm pretty serious about, blacksmithing especially. You got to make sure you're getting those weekly bonuses and grinding out those treasures, even if you don't really feel like it. Early in an expansion, picking up treasures is an easy call because you need all kinds of stuff. But once we're in month 3 or 4, do I really want to stop for every single treasure? Maybe not. But you got to get those knowledge items. You want to be able to make the really high quality stuff for yourself, for your guildies and your friends, and hopefully to make some coin.
Yeah. There were a lot of quest fixes that went into for broken things. The only one on this list that I think I ran into was for Thunderhead Butt, which was they fixed an issue where Durzen, which is this one character, needs to be escorted up a mountain and would sometimes fail to reach the goal at the top of the mountain. That's essentially what I ran into. He went up and he stopped like 20 feet from where he's supposed to actually go, and he can see the end, but he just refuses to move. And the fix that I ran into to resolve that was abandon the quest, accept the quest. Before you accept the escort part of that, run the path yourself, kill everything along the path, and then start the actual escort part, in which case he then walks up and did the actual completion. So that was good, but I'm glad they fixed it, because it's just weird to do a quest and be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Is there something I'm supposed to click? Is there something I'm supposed to interact with? Is there something I'm supposed to say? And you can't figure it out. So I eventually, relied on going to Wowhead and being like, what did everyone else do inside this situation? Oh, well, there's everyone telling me the fix as to how to actually get through it. So I'm glad they resolved that, so other people will not run into the same problem, which is good to hear.
Sometimes stuff gets really weird with those things where like an NPC has to move. I didn't run into this. I did it like the first night, but it's the thing with the two big Ramoliths that got to like go up the mountain. Well, the one's at the top of the mountain already, and you got to escort the other one up. And sometimes getting an NPC to move and trigger a script can be kind of dicey when stuff is new and servers are busy and there's whatever. Sure. But luckily I didn't run into that one. But that was a great quest. I love the Ramoliths. I need some Ramolith mounts. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. I just don't have them yet.
I'm sure there are. Yeah. That's the other thing. You just cued my memory on something. There is transmog armor you can get from the first zone just for killing things out in the world. You basically accept a quest that you then earn a currency whenever you kill threatening creatures or like largely threatening creatures out in the world, and you get one transmog set. And once you turn that in, you can then pick up a quest to get another one of those. Both of them come from the main hub city, so be sure that you pick up that quest, you turn it in when it's completed, and you pick up the next one, because the next one's for like 500. And so I basically then went all the way down to Ashkahet and then finished it when I was in Ashkahet, and then went up and turned in that quest. So I got 6 transmog sets out of that. That was a nice thing to pick up early on while I was doing leveling and doing other things. So
that's the Epic Edition, the transmog set from that. Like it initially came in when they put it up for sale, and then like right before War Within came out, like a couple weeks before, they put in a quest where you get like different colorways for it, which is really cool. And on the trading post, you only got a couple days left for August trading post, but I believe that the hammers that match the other 3 sets I just put in are all up still. I'm pretty sure they were August. Time is quite elastic, but I believe that the August trading post is the Storm Rider hammers that match the different mogs for those sets. So if you got, and they're not that expensive, so if you got some tender hanging around and you think of it, there is a trading post in Dornegal too, so you don't have to go back to the old world. You just go over there. But highly recommend if you're an Epic Edition purchaser and you have the Mog sets, get the hammers to go with them because they look incredible.
Yeah. All right, the Blue Post Roundup. We got War Within content that is now available, obviously. We have the Heroic Dungeons. We have the Honor Vendor List, which is currently a conversion of the Dragonflight Honor and Conquest system. And the first weekly reset, which is, today, we're going to see Profession Sparks come in, the weekly PvP quest, Profession weekly knowledge gains, the Zone weekly wrapper quests, as well as the Delves wrapper quests that are going to be in there as well. So we'll be highlighting what Delves you need to do for this week, as well as the World Soul Memories weekly wrapper quest. So I guess we're going to have memories that you can go back and experience or something along those lines, which is going to be something that's cool for people to check out. And then
I've encountered these like icons on the map, that have like there's an icon that looks like a horn or something, and then there's an element there, but I don't have any of the currency to do anything with it. Yeah. So that's starting up this week, I suppose. So this will be our first experience with like what that whole thing actually looks like, how you get the currency that you need, and then what happens when you do it, and what rewards come out the other end. But this will be like brand new stuff, right? The Zone weekly and the Delves weekly is probably stuff we've been doing in the Outer World and Delves already, but the World Soul Memories stuff will be potentially like new stuff to play.
Well, and it could be another storytelling delivery system where basically they're telling old ancient stories of what took place in these areas where it's taking place in this new world that we've sort of entered, would be kind of a neat thing to see if there was like an old battle that happened that was like a battle that's referenced, slightly inside a quest chain somewhere. Like that kind of idea might be a neat thing to experience in that. So I'm curious as to what they choose to do with that, because it's all about memories. The Awakening the Machine scenario is going to kick off this week, as well as World Soul Spreading the Light, and the Notoriety with Severed Threads leaders. So that is all kicking off this week for folks who are interested in diving into that. Obviously, most of us are. They're also fixing...
Right. You probably should be, yeah.
It should be.
Just one thing on that. Sure. So Awakening the Machine is the event in Ringing Deeps. World Soul Spreading the Light is probably what happens in Hallowfall, I think. That's called Spreading the Light? Yeah. There's like this kind of dynamic thing that happens there where there's different objectives. And actually you get some... like I was doing it this week a little bit, not really with any purpose, but I just strolled over there and started killing stuff and completing objectives. I got some rewards. That was cool. So I assume there's going to be like a more compelling reason to do it as we move into first full reset here. And then one thing I'm curious to find out more about this week is the Severed Threads leaders. They have like, they call it Notoriety. It's essentially like individual rep, like kind of we've seen since Pandaria to some degree, right? So there's like 3 different characters that you can earn specific rep with, and there's like different quests there's like a dungeon quest that rewards like a rep token of your choice, and then you have the 3 zone reps, but for Ashkahet you have each of the 3 Severed Threads leaders that you can earn Notoriety with. So I assume they have like different rewards, maybe different storytelling quests or whatever that come with ranking those up. So I need to do a little research into what that entails and where I'm going to try to apply that rep first, So you probably want to take a look at that for yourself and see like what is on offer there. Like, why are we repping up with these characters and which one do you want to start with? Because you're probably going to have to pick, right? There's 3 of them. And they did a similar thing too in Dragonflight with Obsidian Citadel. And you had to pick Rathian or...
I don't remember his name.
Oh God, I can't remember his name at this exact moment.
Yeah.
But and you got slightly different rewards based on which one you ranked up, and you could rank them both up, but you could only pick one at a time. So I think this system will be probably along those lines. But I got to get the info of like what do I care about from the system and where am I going first, because I don't have that right now.
So it doesn't bother you with Sibelian. That's the other one that was there.
Sibelian, that's who he is. Yeah. Well, once it became all about Abyssian as the expansion went on, it's like, all right, these other guys can get out of here. It's all about Ebonhorn now, baby.
Mm-hmm. All right, they fixed performance issues with War Within trinkets. Apparently, they've recently identified an issue that was impacting the damage and healing done by all War Within trinkets and similar items, such as the Arathi Demolitions Charge Barrel or the Reinforced Wax Plating. Apparently the result is they should increase all of those effects by almost 50%, which I am excited about because I'm currently using the Arathi Demolitions Charge Barrel because it's a very good trinket. It does, for me at the moment, it was like 850,000 damage spread amongst whatever it hits. And so it's really nice for when you're taking on those like 7 million hit point mobs and you can essentially throw a barrel at it in the middle of the fight multiple times and actually have a whole bunch of damage come in, which was really nice. So that was certainly a trinket that I was using. So they're also fixing a couple things with the Van Braces of Deepening Darkness, the Oil of Deep Toxins, and the Siphoning Stiletto, which are a leather working piece. Which Van Braces makes me think it's braces for your arms, as well as the Enchanting one is a Deep Oil of Toxins, which makes me think it's something you put on your weapon as a weapon oil. And then the Siphoning Stiletto makes it sound like it's a dagger you probably craft for blacksmithing. This is why they say similar items. So these sorts of things also would have gotten that 50% bump. So keep that in mind.
Right. And, those are your cantrip items, as they're calling them now, which is sort of their catch-all for weapons that have some kind of special effect or proc.
Exactly.
This is really smart. Like, you want the new gear to be compelling to use and to feel good to use. And you want people to move on from their previous expansion stuff, which kind of brings us to our next item.
Yeah, it does. Our next item is the Dragonflight tier set adjustments. Starting tomorrow, on Wednesday, August 28th, they're going to deploy a hotfix that they want to proceed with some advance notice. Along with all the new hero talents and updates to classes and specializations and War Within, the power values of some of the Dragonflight tier set bonuses have remained relevant in level 80 endgame content. We don't want anyone to feel obligated to go to the previous expansion's content for upgrades, and we want players to graduate out of their Dragonflight gear with the new content. So on Wednesday, they're going to disable all Dragonflight tier set bonuses when your character reaches level 80. They will still aid you throughout leveling, but will cease to function when your character hits level 80, as it should be. This is exactly how this should be. I will say, even at a lower item level pieces of tier, I had full tier going into this expansion leveling. Oh my god, is it ever strong? The Boomkin tier sets were very strong going through leveling in this, and I can't imagine what it was like for other ones. So yeah, there was definitely things that I noticed right away as, wow, this tier set is, I'm not going to replace this for a long time. I think I was replacing it once it was like a 35 to a 50 item level bump. Then I was like, all right, I'm gonna swap out some of these pieces. I feel like I'm gonna need to at some point anyways. Let's start doing that now. And I sort of committed to it, and you could feel the difference in that tier set. It did make me go, I can't wait to get the new tier set, which made me think, I really wish there was a leveling tier set. That's what I immediately went to. And I was like, hey, they should probably do that.
That'd be cool.
They should look in future expansions to go, hey, here's something you can earn early on through the questing campaign, in like the first 2 chapters of the questing campaign, give someone a 4-set bonus out of that, you know, maybe scales with item level, or you get items to upgrade it from the future parts of the quest chain, so that when you hit max level, you actually have like a tier set that you're wearing, that was a leveling set, but all those bonuses essentially become useless because they were all focused around leveling, like increasing your movement speed, and, you know, making your health regen out of combat faster, and making your like that, all that stuff would be kind of neat things to throw in there as set bonuses. But I did miss having a tier set for leveling. I was just one of those things of, once you take it off, you definitely notice the difference. So yes, this is very essential, necessary changes. We don't want people like going back, farming gear, catalyzing it, or whatever it is, to be able to actually use old tier sets. Yeah. Not a thing.
Yeah, you know, it's a bit of a tricky thing. Like it's necessary. It feels kind of weird. Like, you know, you read this as a player and you're like, oh, well, that sucks. They're turning off my power. But like, you have to make the tier set bonuses compelling, right? And you have to make them strong and feel good to have. Otherwise, nobody wants them. And so sometimes that means that at the very end of an expansion, and we're coming out of season 4 where we could get mega powered up if you really, you know, stuck it all the way out. And so then, you know, it's just natural that they got to get tamped back down. I like that they left them on until 79, so you can use them to level, because, you know, you could get all that stuff from the pre-event that just ended, because you could get the pieces there and then catalyze them and get the bonus. Yeah. So that's really cool. And, you know, it's just, the bonuses were really strong. You know, they were sort of the best bonuses from Dragonflight for each class. Or each spec, really, it's, you know, throughout the whole time.
Voted on. Yeah, it's the ones community voted on. So,
so, you know, they were going to obviously be good, and the item level gap, like, you know, I came in at like 527 into this expansion equipped, something like that, and I'm at like 570-ish now. So it's not like a huge gap going from level up to having farmed heroic dungeons for hours, only 50 item levels or whatever. And, you know, sometimes those set bonuses can make up a good, you know, 15, 20, 30 item levels, depending on how good they are. It just has to happen. We're not playing Dragonflight anymore. We have to say goodbye to the past. But so it's to be expected. And I think, like, if you make good tier bonuses, then you have to shut them off when new stuff comes out sometimes. Like, it's not a bad thing. It's not like a miss. It's like, oh, we had this really great bonus and it's actually too good, so that's why we have to shut it off when you're not supposed to be using it anymore.
Yeah, they often do this with different raid tiers. When new raid tiers come out, they'll nerf the previous raid tiers tier sets. They will nerf trinkets from previous raids, things like that, just to make sure that players aren't feeling obligated to go back to that content and wear gear that is 30 item levels lower than what's coming out of the content they're doing, because of whatever weird combination of things went together that made you essentially need to feel like you need to keep wearing it to do the most damage, which is unfortunate. Okay, when will we be able to make earthen characters? This is the question I have been asking myself through this whole situation. And yeah, Kyvex comes out and basically says the 4th storyline chapter will become available on September 3rd, which is next week. So we have to wait till then, because apparently that 4th chapter had better, in my opinion, include some serious earthen stuff in it. There better be a lot of earthen things happening that explain why now we're able to do earthen stuff. I know the technology exists to be able to link Earthen to something other than the storyline campaign being completed for them to unlock them earlier. So that last chapter had better involve some Earthen business that makes sense as to why now we're able to start making Earthen. Because I think we had the discussion earlier in the show. I don't want to circle all the way back to it, but I feel like after, Ringing Deeps, it could have just gone, yep, Earthen are now something that are unlocked and you can start making Earthen, and people could do that. Because, yeah, man, like, everyone wants to make Earthen. Like, what? Come on, man.
Yeah, you made us like kind of just sort of fall in love with them in a way over like questing through all of his stuff, and now we can't blame you. Yeah. I mean, part of it goes to show, like, first of all, it's not that bad compared to maybe how it's been in some other
there was
implementations of it.
Previously,
right.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do that kind of repetitive stuff to unlock them, which is a win, but it just kind of shows like the whole concept to me is just flawed. Let us just play the damn characters. But, whatever. It was September 3rd. Okay. I will say, like, the max level campaign did come in last night. This was not stuff that was available in early access. So if you didn't play, like, kind of, a bit later last night, NA after global launch, you might have missed this. I haven't had a chance to start the max level campaign yet because I got together with some friends and we did heroic dungeons for about 5 hours, and I was like, I'm done playing now. Right? So I'll probably do that today. I'll check it out. I'm excited to see where it goes because we had some threads kind of hanging, right? Like Thrall, like pretty early on, he goes back and Jaina, and they're sort of out of the picture for a little while. So, we got to get all the pieces back on the board here. So that would, I'm looking forward to seeing like where all this goes. But I think we get like 2 chapters this week and 2 chapters next week. And then I guess that'll complete it. And then you'll be able to unlock your Earthen and create the, like, I'm probably going to boost
it. That's
mine
exactly
to
where I'm at.
70.
Like at this point,
I don't want to do the low level up. They hotfixed it so you can get the heritage armor without having leveled from 1 or 10 or whatever. So, I mean, collecting the heritage armors is one of my favorite things to do in the game. So and plus, like, they're going to look great in the bonus, the Epic Edition bonus transmog armor with the storm hammers and everything. So I'm ready. I'm super excited to see like what, intro experience or whatever they have is like, and what the heritage thing is like. I wish I could do it this week though. That's my only thing. Like,
I'm with you.
If this whole campaign was just available as of yesterday or as of today, I would play through it all and I would unlock my Earthen and I would have all that while I sort of have this holiday week, to play. So it's kind of a bummer, but in a little while it won't matter anymore.
You know what I think of when I think of Earthen weapons? I think of the Legion legendary fist weapons that were just large stone gauntlets that you wore that you could punch things with. That's what I'm considering.
There's so many cool options for them. Like I love the way they look. It's just their dimensions. They're just they're dwarf-ish, but they're like way just bulkier. They're bigger, and the special effects on their hair and stuff look really cool. It's wire. They call it wire. And, there's a couple nice kind of multicolored options for them that really make it stand out and look different than, the dwarf characters we've had before. So I'm really excited to play them and to see, what the kind of custom Earthen questing stuff is all about and get all that collection stuff. But one more week, give or take. One more week and some questing and we'll get there.
Yep. All right. With that, I want to move on to a letter we got in here from a listener who actually was someone who we just talked about from one of the little reviews that they left for us. So here's one that comes in from Fraser, who says, "Hey guys, left a review a few weeks ago, and I just heard you guys responding to it at the end of the Radiant Echoes episode. I was able to hit 3K. I finished at 3267, so you guys were totally right. A couple friends helped me get there, and with the changes to talents, I cleared a 16. Anyways, super cool to hear the response. Thank you. Good luck with the war with NA." And so, it's, I appreciate the Canadianism at the end. That made a lot, it touches my heart. When it comes to, you getting 3267, that's wonderful. That is way over 3K. So, I'm glad you got in there.
Past 3K.
And slam that out and got your achievement done. And that was perfect. But if you're someone who wants to, write in and leave us a review, you can do that over in your iTunes, your Apple Podcast, and leave us those 5 stars. They really help out our show. They boost us up those charts for people to be able to find us. And this one comes in from Josie MV3 or Joss NV3.
No, it's Jose. I think
Jose.
it's
It's Jose NV3. There's like 4 ways I could say this name. It could be Hosem V3. I don't know. Like, that's possible.
It's possible, but I'm pretty sure it's Jose.
Jose MV3. Okay. Well, Jose, I apologize if I offended you in some way. Anyways, entitled Amazing, says perfect show for returning players and people that need updates on endgame activities and what's new. I have been listening for years. Amazing show for my WoW playings. And so thank you very much, both Jose as well as Fraser, for writing in. We appreciate you. That 5-star really helps boost us up those charts and helps more people find the show. And we love hearing follow-ups on things like this. So I'm glad that you hit your over 3K and got that all done.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a really high rating, and clearing a 16 that's really high, even with being the kind of end of expansion frenzy. So congrats on that, and thanks for checking back in. It's cool to hear from you. And yeah, thank you for the review, Jose. Like, we're in such a weird little window right now. A lot of WoW is sort of about the weekly routine, and there just kind of isn't one right now, which is fun. I think it's great to have this window where this lower level, lower stakes, lower difficulty content really has a couple weeks to breathe, and we can just kind of enjoy all the stuff that they've built for us to play, and we don't have to worry about super min-maxing everything or, learning strats for these really complicated encounters. It's a really nice breath of fresh air in a way. I know some players are sort of like, oh, can we just get into the meat of it already? But I've really enjoyed this, and, we're going to have more like stuff to do this week in terms of the weekly sort of routine with the quests and all that.
Yeah.
But it's a very gentle ramp, and we'll sort of figure it out together, and we'll have to, the Dragonflight format for this show is in the trash at this point because we're not going back there. And so we'll have to see the shape of what the new kind of weekly routine is going to look like. And really that won't even shape up for another couple weeks here. So it's fun to have this much time to just really take a more chill approach and just hang out and experience the content. I think it's been awesome to have this early access window and then to have like 2 more weeks of just really low stakes stuff and low ceilings. It's I think easing into the expansion is a great way to approach it.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, I would like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, James, Kapawi, Max, Pinky, Shorel, and Rager. I also need to update that list because I think we have a couple of names added in there, so I'll get that in for next week's episode. But thank you so much for all that you give all of our patrons, past and present, out there who support the show. We appreciate you. You help keep us on the air and keep us going. You make sure that we get up at 7 a.m. to record a podcast so that we can actually make sure that the show happens on time and gets out to you all. And this week, I'm giving a shout out to our newest patron, Alex G. Thank you so much, Alex, for hopping in and supporting the show. And if you want to support our show, you can find our Patreon over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. Please do it on your computer. Do not use your mobile Apple device or Google device. They will charge you 30% more. Use your computer. It is unfortunate that is where we've come to, but they changed the policies on both Apple and Google products so that they now receive a 30% upcharge on everything that happens on Patreon. So basically they are costing you 30% more to support the show, and none of that money goes to us. It just goes to those app providers. So go to patreon.com on your browser /the starting zone and hop in and support us there. And then you don't have to worry about any of those sorts of situations happening for you. So yeah, all that money starts going towards us as opposed to large mega companies like Apple and Google. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. We appreciate the support. Welcome aboard. And thank you, patrons, past and present, for all the support over the years. We've been doing this show a really long time now, just you and I
know.
As of this month, it's 8 years, right? Yep. So, and we've been pretty much weekly, like maybe at the very beginning, it was a little, it was like, since August of 2016, we've delivered more than weekly episodes.
Yeah.
The initial kind of getting the format and schedule locked in was a little janky. So we might have missed something somewhere, but like it's been years and years and years of weekly shows. And the response to the show of late has been incredible. It's so fun doing this show when the game is hot and when the game is good and when the team is cooking and when it's just really all coming together, because I feel like we have such a direct line to our audience. We seem to be really in tune with what the people who listen to this show or care about, and it's great to hear from them in all the different ways that we do that. And this is the time when all of that, all of that really comes together, when there's so much new stuff to go do and experience, and when it's so rewarding to play. Like, this War Within has felt so great so far. We'll see where we're at in 2 months and in 6 months and whatever, but the first impressions are incredibly strong with this one. And not having the pitfalls of the Azeroth armor and the conduit energy and all that, it feels pretty good. I think we're in great shape. So we'll see how it plays out. But man, this first few days here has just been incredible. I think I'll remember this one for a really long time, no matter what ends up happening with this game in the future.
I want to highlight, actually, Jason, this is our 8-year anniversary of the time that we hosted our first episode.
Oh, wow. Okay.
August 27th, 2016 was our very first episode where it was you and I hosting together. So
right,
it is actually that. It is actually that situation. It was episode 165, for those who are curious. And since then, we have hosted 481 episodes of The Starting Zone. And we probably could add 5 or 6 to that number just from the episodes that we co-hosted with Mick previously. You can at least add a few episodes onto that. But yeah, August 27th, 2016 was our first solo host of the show, and it's now August 27th, 2024. So happy 8-year.
Unreal, man. Just in the blink of an eye, right?
Yep.
I mean, at that point, we were just gearing up for Legion. Legion was just about to come out, know? And man, what an era of the game that was. And now for that to have been so long ago, it just doesn't even make any sense. But it's been a real winding road since Legion launch, but I feel like, we've come out in such a strong place after all the sort of lean years there. And it feels great to have been along for that whole ride, and I mean, there's listeners we hear from consistently who have been with us since we kind of took over from Mick, which is amazing, so thank you to everybody who stuck with us over all this time. Because it's been sometimes you stop and think about it and it's like, wow, this is now what, the 5th expansion that we've covered a launch of. Right. I mean, it doesn't. That's like half the game almost, right?
Yeah.
At least in terms of expansion releases, it's half of the expansions. It's very weird to think about, but it's been fun. It just keeps getting more fun with the direction the game's been going in.
Yeah. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 646 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you're someone who does want to check out older episodes, an easy way to do it is I code all the episodes in the URL for the website to the episode number. So if you wanted to look at episode 165, for example, you could just go to startingzone.com/EP as an episode, EP 165, and then it would just take you to that actual episode on the website with the show notes. And some of those show notes still work. some of them still link to blue posts. Some of the blue posts they've taken down, but it's pretty neat when you can sort of go through the archive and be like 166, 167, 168, and work your way through and sort of see what happened back then and be able to check out just the notes themselves as to what was happening around the game. So love having that. And, part of the things patron support is keeping those sorts of archives online. So we appreciate you. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter @thestartingzone, or you can join our Discord server. That's thestartingzone.com/Discord. And you can just click the button there and that'll pop open your Discord and let you join our Discord server. And we also have a store where you can buy some gear. That's teepublic.com/stores/the starting zone. And you can get shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of fun stuff over there. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, as always, is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, and you can also find me over on Blue Sky. Username is just J Lucas over there. I haven't really posted on Blue Sky ever so far, but whatever. I'm kind of waiting. We'll see. I do have an account. I do check it regularly, so come say hi over there. And you can also find me streaming WoW, twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald are the video channels. I will be. I streamed a bunch last night for global launch. I want to stream a bunch this week when I can, because we do have drops and support a streamer going on. So if you watch any eligible WoW channel, including mine, for 4 hours, you get a mount for free. And if you give 2 subs to any channel, you can get a pet. And so my channel is eligible for all that stuff. A bunch of people were hanging out last night. It was super fun to see everybody, and some people I haven't seen in stream chat in quite a long time. So it's always nice to hear from people checking in, and you get some cool bonuses for hanging out too. So do that. YouTube.com/Shieldwall also exists. I will push stream to there probably, but at least for like the next little while here, you want to watch on Twitch because you get free stuff.
I will also emphasize, same as what happened with Apple and Google, Twitch is doing the same thing under Amazon. So if you're going to subscribe to a channel, do it from your computer, because it costs 30% more to subscribe from your phone.
Just don't use your mobile apps to buy anything at this point if you can possibly avoid it.
Yeah, that's apparently what's happening. A tier 1 sub in Canada is currently $12 to subscribe on your phone, which is like, hey, do I want my WoW subscription for the month or to sub to one Twitch channel? Which is going to give me more value here? Like, that's really the situation we're starting to get to.
Like, no offense to any Twitch streamer, but the math just does not work.
Yeah. All right. With that, if you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or you can find me on twitch.tv/SpencerHD. And I have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SpencerHD. With that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.